Welcome to the JEMS Report, brought to you by Clarion Events, Fire and Rescue Group, and the Journal of Emergency Medical Services. My name is Ted Lee, and I'm the editor-in-chief of JEMS Magazine. Along with Jeff Frankel, our managing editor, we're bringing you subject matter experts and industry leaders in all things that touch emergency medical services. Today, I have a very special guest, Stephanie DeLorenzo, and her focus is emergency management. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
So why don't we get into a little bit of your background? I know a little bit of your background. You started in EMS, but why don't you kind of lay out the history and how you got into emergency management from EMS?
Yeah, sure. So good to see you, Ted. Started my career in EMS in 2008 when I was 18, and you were my instructor all the way back in Charleston, South Carolina. So good to see you again. I've come a long way since then. So I did EMS for most of my 20s, but I didn't really focus on that as a career. I kind of went into paramedic school thinking I was going to do it as a career, and then kind of transitioned to go get a bachelor's degree. But throughout my 20s, I still practiced as an EMT. I worked at like a theme park. I worked in 911. I did some campus 911 responding stuff as well. And that was all through college as I was kind of figuring out what I really wanted to do. And then graduate school is when I found out about this career of emergency management specifically. So I wasn't even sure that this existed. I actually went to graduate school to be an urban planner. You have to get a master's degree to do that. I wanted to plan cities and do all this stuff. But the school I went to, Florida State University, had a really good emergency management program. And I was looking into different kind of extracurriculars to get involved with. And they had this really cool emergency management club. And I was like, what is this? And so this was like my first month in graduate school. And then I learned that this was an entire field of emergency management. And to me, it seemed to be a good mashup of my EMS background and then also my desire to like do city planning and helping cities. And I was like, wow, you can combine these two in some way into a career field. So I got super excited about that. So once I learned about the field of emergency management in graduate school, I just kind of hit the ground running. And then in 2015, when I graduated from graduate school, I've just kind of been all cylinders in this field of emergency management. So about 10 years kind of going from different jobs in emergency management, trying to find my niche. And because I went through that journey, I've kind of landed on where I'm at now, which is helping others understand what the field is and how to transition into it and really just get people excited as I am about it.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I asked you to join us today. This kind of transition. Historically, I've known, emergency managers have kind of been coming from EMS, police, or fire, and either something happened in their career to where they couldn't necessarily do the job anymore, but they were still interested in the professional or the mindset, or that they just had so much experience that it was a natural transition for them. But now, like you mentioned, there are schools and programs out there, specifically towards this discipline, and this discipline has been growing, as we've been developing. So it's interesting to hear that you kind of naturally gravitated into something that was booming at the time.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely, and that still is kind of the case a little bit. So I'm in this field. I've been in it for about 10 years, and there is still kind of this. Maybe war happening between people thinking that you should value the experience that you've had in being first responder of some fashion in public safety versus education. And so that's still kind of happening. So people going into emergency management from police, fire, EMS is still a thing, but then also people are getting into emergency management kind of through the academic track as well. And both are valid is something I want to emphasize. I don't take a side on this war at all. I think both are valid, and whichever path somebody wants to take to get into emergency management, you can go either way. So if you have that long-term background in paramedic and you don't necessarily have a bachelor's degree or a master's degree, you can get into this field. But if you want to go the academic route and get a degree in emergency management or something similar, you can also go that route. And they being those who hire emergency managers, value either one. So there's different paths to get into this field, which is really exciting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it opens up the possibilities, and it's great because, it does lend to the experience of having a background in fire, police, or EMS to understand it a little bit better. but it's still kind of that, obscure, undefined title of emergency management. Well, what is emergency management? So, being in the field as long as you have and having the background that you have, what is emergency management for the layperson out there to go, well, I thought that was fire, police, and EMS.
Yeah, no, that's completely valid. So the definition that I came up with just from being in the field for a while and talking. So emergency managers are those in the emergency management field who coordinate people and resources at the operational and or strategic level. I'm going to emphasize that to prevent, mitigate, respond to, and recover from disasters affecting their community. So what that means in layman's terms, I'm sure a lot of firefighters, EMS out there are like, well, I manage emergencies every day, and you absolutely do. But a lot of what you do in that field is very tactical. You are moving, this asset to this part of the fire, or you are moving these patients to like this area. When you get into emergency management, you kind of take a step back, and it's a little bit more of the higher level of like connecting resources outside of like your own specific part of your world. So if you're the emergency manager for a county, you are assisting the fire department in managing that incident, but then you're also connecting dots kind of around kind of the county or the city or what have you. And that's where you get into the more operational and strategic level of things. So you're still allowing, as the emergency manager, the fire department, the fire chief, whoever's the incident commander, to run that incident, but you are assisting them at that point. It's like, incident commander, what do you need? Do you need more resources? Okay, cool. I'm going to handle that for you while you manage the tactical aspects of that emergency or the disaster. So hopefully that makes sense. And the other cool thing about emergency management, and what I just described, is very local emergency management. So your typical county level, right? Your county emergency manager, what they're doing is, while you as the fire chief or the paramedic are managing that incident as the incident commander, the emergency manager is connecting the resources. But emergency management is a huge, huge field, and it could be anywhere. Hospitals hire emergency managers. You could work at FEMA at the federal level, which has a completely different lens on emergency management. You could work for Amazon, any of these larger corporations. They have their own kind of version of emergency management. So there's just so many avenues you can take that aren't just the typical county level one guy or gal kind of running emergency management. There's so many ways you can go in this field, which is why I love it so much. It's so dynamic, and there's so many places to end up.
Well, and that makes it interesting too, because who would have thought that, oh wow, Amazon would have something like this?
Yeah.
But we've seen to where, larger companies, they started having some type of health and wellness aspect of it. And we saw paramedics gravitate towards that. We saw from the fire aspect, you saw, large companies that had to mitigate possible problems on their plants or oil rigs or things like that, to where they had some type of fire response. So, that was a natural for that. Of course, the law enforcement always has, the sector, safety stuff, personnel safety, things like that. So this was just, one more expansion of, oh, well, there's a need there. And as these companies get larger and larger, they start really valuing those type of skill sets.
Yeah, absolutely. And you started to kind of touch on a little bit, but what I described is kind of like general emergency management. You're coordinating resources, but you can also get into the niche and like specialize in areas as well. So you could be a generalist emergency manager. Like I was mentioning, you are the emergency manager for your county, for a part of Amazon, for this hospital, and you're kind of the generalist and you're connecting dots. But you could also specialize in this field as well. So you could be trainings and exercises. So I'm sure most paramedics or firefighters listening to this have done some sort of full-scale exercise, maybe a tabletop exercise. Companies hire people just to design those exercises and do really good trainings. You can focus on planning, writing plans for maybe a hospital or a college and their emergency management office. You could be a PIO, public information officer, and you can take that kind of skill set that maybe you've learned in the fire service or EMS and take that to another agency to do their public information, crisis communications. So you could either generalize and be a typical emergency manager for a county or something, or you could kind of niche up in something and focus on that in your career, and also get jobs all over the country, all over the world in your specialization.
So have you seen, during, you said the last 10 years or so, you've been kind of ingrained and engrossed in this field. Have you noticed that there's been an expansion of the need for this, or for, trained and educated providers to be able to fill these roles?
I mean, from the paramedic aspect, I would say yes, just because those who have had that on the ground experience have just such unique skills. So I'll put my hat on for the one pro experience as opposed to pro education. So if you have this experience, you've been a paramedic for 10 years, you've learned a lot of really good skills as far as critical thinking, relationship building, thinking on your feet in general, being able to like take a step back and see what's needed, versus somebody who's gone through school and maybe they're very academically focused. They would be really good in other aspects. The fact that paramedics and firefighters have very good life skills that they've learned in their careers, yes, that is absolutely translatable and needed in the emergency management field.
So where do you see this? Where do you see this going? Is this a growth, or is this a field that is kind of, well, it was needed for a period of time. It's kind of reached its kind of precipice. It's filled, and who
Yeah.
knows where it's going to go in the future.
I mean, we all watch the news, we all see the weather. Disasters are not slowing down. They are going to increase consistently. And so not only do I think there's going to be more jobs in the field, I think there's also the idea of burnout as well. So people often burn out as paramedics. Well, people are going to burn out as emergency managers as well, just having to continuously respond to these. And so maybe that's something that attracts you, like, all right, I may be done with paramedic, I'm done being up 2 a.m. and getting very little sleep. Maybe let me transition into emergency management and start relieving these individuals who have been constantly deploying to and responding to disasters. And I may be more well rested in that sense, but I don't see this slowing down at all. And the other thing is there's more kind of niches coming out as well. So response is like the sexy side. Everybody wants to do response, but there's a lot of emphasis on resilience now and preparedness. So we all know climate change is happening. So there's a lot more jobs in the resilience field as well. So that preparing and helping cities and counties and communities adapt to these disasters, those jobs are coming up more and more for sure.
But that's very interesting to hear that, we're adapting to that. And of course, I would imagine, just like with, of course, my background being EMS, as we're becoming more and more versed on using the data that we're collecting reams and reams of data on everything, and we're looking at the research, and we're looking for not only cost benefit, but outcome basis on what we're actually doing. I'm sure a lot of that is starting to come up in emergency management as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's a growing field. It's a good time to get into it if it's something that you're interested in. And paramedics have amazing skills that will be absolutely valuable as we kind of move this field forward and protect the earth from all these disasters that are coming.
So you mentioned a little bit about it having the experience or going the academic route. How does somebody make that type of transition? What do they look for? How do they prepare for it? What kind of insight would you have, seeing as you did it? How did you do it?
Yeah, for sure. So some of the things I would consider if you are thinking about transitioning over is first to understand the fields, like what emergency management is versus isn't. So understanding that it's not as on the ground as you're used to as a paramedic. You're going to be more in the emergency operations center. You're going to be more relationship building, project management, program management, grants, a lot of really important stuff, but it's kind of, you're taking a step back to kind of manage and coordinate from a more operational strategic level. There are some ways you can go if you want to get the more on the ground experience. You can deploy with FEMA or different organizations, different nonprofits, different federal entities, but that is not the vast majority of the jobs in emergency management. That's just like a small niche. Most of the emergency management jobs you'll look up are going to be more of those kind of more desk job in a way, more strategic strategic, operational, relationship building jobs. So that's my first kind of tip. And second, if you're trying to transition over, really focus on emphasizing those transferable skills. So I know paramedics do a great job with, they're good at starting IVs, reading EKGs, all that is awesome. But when you're maybe writing your resume, focus more on the other transferable skills like relationship building, critical thinking, any sort of more operational strategic things that you've done as a paramedic, as opposed to those more tactical, because that's what you're going to be focused on. The third thing I would say is learn how to brand yourself properly in your resume and on LinkedIn. So again, like I'm saying about the transferable skills, kind of focus on that in your resume. And in addition to that, kind of a three and a half kind of step on this is look into taking more of these emergency management courses and trainings. So as a paramedic or firefighter, I'm sure most people have taken or at least know about ICS 300 and 400, and then also the incident command NIMS things such as IS 100, 200, 700, 800. So starting with those and getting a lot of these like FEMA courses that can kind of get you more into the mindset of emergency management, that's going to help you as well. And then the last two things I would say are, if you're looking into this, be flexible and keep your options open. So a lot of people only want to focus on, oh, I want to stay here in Omaha, Nebraska, which is fine. But just know that if you're looking for emergency management jobs, there might be limited options in your hometown. You might have to kind of think about moving somewhere else to like find that position. And then the last thing is network. That includes volunteering as well. So network by joining different organizations such as the International Association of Emergency Managers, join any groups on Facebook or LinkedIn or Reddit that talk about emergency management, and then also volunteer, looking into kind of getting your toes wet a little bit about emergency management. So there's a lot of different organizations you can get involved with. There's the Red Cross, there's Team Rubicon is a really great volunteer organization that focuses on disaster relief. They're very veteran-led and focused. There's also your Community Emergency Response Team, or CERT. Almost every community in the country has some sort of CERT program. So just kind of look around for volunteer opportunities to even see if this is something you're interested in.
And then lastly, the academic programs.
Yeah.
How many academic programs are there generally across the United States?
That's a great question. I feel like it keeps updating like every month. There's quite a few. I think if you go to the IAEM, the organization that I just mentioned, website, they have a list of them. Also, I think FEMA also has come up with a list of colleges that have emergency management programs. I'm going to venture to guess 50 across the country. That's just a complete guess on this, but they are growing. And the other thing to consider, though, is because this is a new field and there's not a lot of consensus on what exactly emergency management is, some are accredited and some are not. So it's not like going to nursing school where it's like this is an accredited nursing program, or like a law school, this is accredited. It's kind of the Wild West right now. So if you look into an emergency management academic program, it might be accredited, but I don't even know who accreditates it at this point. So just if you want a good foundation in emergency management, like any of these programs will be really, really good, but it's still the Wild West. So I would just do some research and see if any of them speak to you and can help you kind of start your academic journey into emergency management.
Right. Well, a lot like, fire programs, police programs, EMS programs before COAMPS came along. They weren't accredited, and they were just by state, and every state was a little bit different, and the programs were different for sure.
Exactly.
So a little bit of buyer beware, but do your research and your homework and make sure that you're making the right decisions.
Yeah.
So great information. Thank you very much for joining me today. So you just got back from a deployment from Team Rubicon?
I did.
So that's exciting. Down in the Houston area?
I did, yeah. Still getting caught up on sleep for sure, but it was a fantastic experience. It was completely volunteer. So I'm a huge proponent of volunteering, especially in emergency management. So if that's something that people are able to do, Team Rubicon deployments are a week at a time. I know people who work full time will generally have to take some time off, or they have an agreement with their employer, but it's always a good time to get that experience and do really good things for the community.
And what else do you have going on right now? What are you working towards?
Yeah, so right now, so I'm volunteering with Team Rubicon quite a bit, but I'm also working on helping people get into this field if they are looking to get into the field. So I have worked in emergency management, multiple different jobs, whether that's the Red Cross, I've worked at FEMA, I've worked for local government and emergency management. So I've kind of done a full lap in this field. So I'm trying to help people understand how to navigate it. I'm very good at resumes. I'm very good at interview prep. I'm very good at reading job postings, that kind of stuff. So I'm working with people, especially first responders, to help them transition into the field. So more than happy to work with anybody who's interested in this and kind of have them pick my brain for a little bit and see how I can assist.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you for doing that, because of course, the first people that always transition, it's always difficult. You're looking for mentors, you're looking for people that kind of are in the know, and in new fields or emerging fields, it's hard to find quality people to help. So thank you for that. Again, I want to thank you for your time. I know you're super busy and getting back from deployment. I'm sure you need to catch up on some stuff and maybe get some rest as well. But it was a pleasure talking to you. Look forward to talking to you in the future about things emergency management related.
Yeah, no, this was great. Thanks for having me, and I really appreciate the time.